Welcome to Marketing People Love. I'm your host, Jacques Spitzer. And if you're passionate about storytelling and brand marketing and knowing what it takes to create marketing people love, then this podcast will be a place for you to get inspired by some of the top experts in the world who are actively creating, yes, you guessed it, marketing people love. Today we have with us a special guest, Melissa Rosenthal, Chief Creative Officer for ClickUp. And they just raised $400 million last year at a $4 billion valuation. And that makes them a quadruple unicorn. Not sure if that's real or not, if that's a term, but I liked it and I put it in my script. When people say that someone is on a rocket ship of growth, Melissa knows so much about it that I'm pretty sure NASA should just go ahead and make her an honorary astronaut, because she has been part of 3 disruptive startups already, from BuzzFeed to Cheddar and now ClickUp, and she's been at the helm of it all. So we're gonna be talking about what it's been like to go from a startup to a Super Bowl ad, what has been her North Star with the brand, how she thinks about disruption in marketing, what inspires her, and what she would say to someone who's looking to disrupt with their marketing without a Super Bowl budget. So strap in, because we're about to take off on her rocket ship, and there's bound to be some G-forces at play. Melissa, welcome to Marketing People Love.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about, everyone talks about rocket ships, right? It's almost like a cliche. You see the emojis, which I love the rocket ship emoji, but you all have truly, I live in San Diego. I've seen the rise of ClickUp. In fact, if you've been to a Padre game lately, you would assume that they're now just ClickUp. They're not even the Padres, right? So you guys have been on this meteoric rise from startup to Super Bowl. And so tell us a little bit about building a brand, right? Because it wasn't, when you entered into this circumstance, it wasn't necessarily this national brand. And now you all have probably international intentions. You're probably already international for all I know. So what has that been like to be so early in something that's growing so fast and having to steer a brand that's growing that fast?
Yeah, it's a great question. So this is, I would say, kind of the second time I've experienced this. First time was BuzzFeed, where we went, I was employee number 10. So going from, a tiny little startup in a loft to like a household name company that was pretty much like defining culture was like very similar, I would say, in the capacity of like going from 0 to 100. The thing that you don't see is like all the work behind the scenes that kind of allows you to get there. So yeah, when I first came on board, we kind of were just starting to actually put marketing dollars in place. A lot of the growth to date, or pretty much all of it, had been just PLG. So product-led growth, really no marketing investing, which is amazing. That's exactly where you want to come in, because then you can, put the fuel in the rocket and say, all right, let's go. Like, we can build something incredible. So, the grass is pretty green and the field is pretty open, because we hadn't done much marketing before. And, with the amount that you're going to be spending, there's a lot of, even outside of, billboards and large format ads like a Super Bowl, all of the money that you're putting behind even performance spend or ads or, Google ads, like all of that has a huge impact in what the brand becomes. So if you create a North Star immediately of kind of what that persona looks like and what that personality feels like, and then you incorporate that into kind of everything you do, even like small things like tweets and style and tone, eventually you end up building a pretty strong brand and perception and market based on that personality. So yeah, it was a large task, but you chip away at it. You create a North Star of what that means, which was humanizing the brand and humanizing the product for us, and making it something relatable, and also doing that throughout everything that we did, everything that would touch our potential customer or our existing customers.
Melissa, I can't tell you how much I want to hear about this North Star. And the reason is, in my preparation for talking to you, today, my literal thing was, from startup to Super Bowl ad, what has been your North Star on this rocket ship? And because I, as someone who loves branding and advertising, I think I recognize the potential challenge that growing so fast is, and how many, there's a lot of opinions. You have investors, you have leadership, you have your own marketing team. and you're moving so fast that it's so important to kind of have this North Star. And so tell me a little bit more about how you all have, like, maybe more tactically humanized the brand, because it is software. And
Yeah,
I have some things I've noticed, like our company now, we switched over to ClickUp maybe 2-3 months ago.
love it.
And even though that onboarding video with Zeb, was such a great little touch. Would just give me a little bit of like, what does that look like practically over the last year or two?
Yeah, I mean, so that onboarding video is like the first thing we ever did, right? And it gave just like a hint of personality and humanization to a process in which like can become very technical and very rigid. And that's sort of the belief, right? It's marrying the instructional part of how do you use our product with how does the product make you feel. And I think there are a lot of elements in which you can kind of you can in like really just inject like humanization into that. And that's everywhere from your onboarding to how do we speak to people when they write in a customer support ticket, to our social brand, like what does that stand for? And then all of the different pieces of our advertising. So, tactically, it's really like what that North Star just needs to be, how do we want people to feel outside of like the goal of making them a ClickUp customer? And that's, delight and awe and surprise. And, it's easier to strike that because I think what we were doing and what we set out to do just with adding elements of humor and like kind of like, wow, like they are doing, the Mac PC model that we did for, our kind of Jira campaign. Like a lot of that stuff would help us build that because it's like, wow, they're self-aware, but they're smart with humor. They take it a step far. Maybe it's a little controversial. I think that's okay.
Yeah,
You have the ability to do that early days, definitely. So you want to take risks like that because those are the things that you get known for. So yeah, I think it was more like, let's infuse humor into what we do and have a really meaningful human connection with the people that are using our product. And that kind of goes from anywhere from that marketing side, our advertising, to our social voice, to our design. It's all very intentional. I
I
think
love
it's
it.
intentional. Yeah.
Also, after the show, I want to send we at Raindrop had developed and designed. I think his name was Clicky, but like it was like a version of the Microsoft paperclip. I just literally
Yeah.
was just playing with paperclip in my hand. And maybe his name was Clicky. I forget what it was, but it cracked me up. So someone on our team, like I think, sent it over to someone.
I think I might have seen it. I think it was,
No,
yeah. Yeah,
Clicky made its way to you. Anyway,
maybe.
it was cracking me up, but definitely, I'm sure it would be a trademark violation or something on Microsoft. But yeah, I'm very curious. You know, um, I feel like this entire episode is just going to be me gushing over what you've done. So I apologize in advance. But I feel like you hear over and over, if you're online or anywhere and people are talking about marketing, one of the big things they say over and over again is like, you don't want to focus all on the USPs, you want to or unique selling propositions. You want to focus more so on the outcome. And the age old
Yeah.
kind of example that people give is like, well, you don't really want to drill, you want a 1/4 inch hole, right?
Mhm.
And I've noticed that you all have really leaned into almost like to an extreme of like, I'm not going to explain the product, right? I'm going to explain some of the outcomes you're going to get, whether it's save a day a week or like some of these other. You guys make some big claims that are very simple, and I'm curious, like what the overall strategy is. I mean, I have my guesses, but I'm curious when the decision was made to be like, we're not going to try to explain to people all the features and functionalities. We're just going to say, hey, this is a better way of doing what you're doing now, and then you're going to have to like trust us and come along on the journey. So help me understand, it help the listeners understand what the thought process has been in that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, when you don't have a brand name and you need to grab people's attention, making bold claims and statements that pique curiosity, and speak to outcomes rather than feature selling is a smart way to do that. because we're in a very crowded market. So if we're just kind of, selling based on features, that at some point you lose. So it's a mix of that. There's a lot that you see the big, bold, save one day every week, one app to replace them all. You see our billboards, but there's a lot of also retargeting where we are selling, features, but the stuff that we become known for is that outcome, that emotional sale. But there's a lot behind the scenes, of course, in like a sophisticated marketing machine when you're firing across all cylinders and you're able to do that. But I think it's a mix, it's a marriage of being able to sell those outcomes and really resonate with people emotionally, and then sell them based on kind of what the product does, what they need. There's also a point in time where, at some point you're known for your claims and you start selling based on, more heavily on features, but you still don't have to lean too heavily away from marrying in that, that humor, that element that, built you to begin with. But, I think it's definitely a balance of selling outcome versus USPs and making sure that like your marketing reflects both. But everyone, it's like, I get the same thing. It's like, your billboards don't tell us what you do. And it's like, well, if it got you to the site, that was the point.
This episode is brought to you by Brandpop. Do you want to craft a compelling brand voice that is consistent and breaks through the noise? Then Brandpop is for you. Brandpop takes users through a self-guided online workshop filled with incredible animated explainer videos and interactive modules that allow you to answer key questions like, how do I want to make my customers feel? What are they saying about themselves by interacting with my brand? And what sets my brand apart from the rest? Usually a brand plan costs tens of thousands of dollars to create, but Brandpop's platform allows you to do it for a fraction of the investment while having fun learning about crafting messaging that stands out. Head over to mybrandpop.com and use the code MPL20 to save an additional 20%. That's mybrandpop.com, code MPL20. Last night I was at an event and there was another agency owner there. And we were chatting and I was like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to be doing a pod. He's asked me, how's your podcast going? Oh, tomorrow I'm podcast with Melissa. And he was like, oh, wow, like we're actually thinking about moving over to ClickUp. And I'm like, oh, we actually moved over to ClickUp 2 or 3 months ago. Well, in that moment, right, with us being, 2-3 times the size of their agency, he's like, oh, well, you're ahead of us. You made the switch. You now have basically validated it for me, and I was aware of it to even bring it up or ask about it. And it's like, that's how the sort of momentum starts. And I can see and feel that. It's like, once you just get the ball rolling, if it really is a great product. And the way I described the product to him, and I'd be curious if you'd agree with this, is I said, it's almost unfair, because what ClickUp did was they let other people sort of prove that the market was needed. And then not by intention, but you just sort of like 6 or 7 years in, went to a market that was growing, went, okay, but like, what if we just started from scratch and just built exactly what people need now into the future without any of the baggage of like what people expect to do? And people are more likely to switch platforms and learn something new than they are to like new features that like puts them out of their own workflow. And so I from the outside looking in, I was like, oh man, this is like almost an unfair advantage, because you can just build what's needed now and into the future. You don't have to worry about a user base that you're going to confuse or make mad or whatever. And that's how I describe ClickUp to people. It's like, it's just what you want and need without any of the baggage of what has been the last 6 or 7 years of building something else that now needs to morph into what people need. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a less opinionated way of building software, and it's more modular, so people can customize it to the way that they want to work. And I think that's what makes it really special, rather than like a lot of the other software that's been created so far in our category is definitely opinionated. It's you have to work this way, and we don't really believe in that. We believe in the like work becoming more modular as people become, as different ways of working proliferate, like hybrid working, right? Async. You should be able to work async in the product in any capacity that you want to. You should have your customized views based on the way that you do work, because not everyone works the same way, even in the same organization. And I think we acknowledge that, and it really definitely gave us like a leg ahead in the market, because like the frustrations with other software is the fact that it won't do this for me. And it's like, well, Yeah, I mean, we don't have that problem. The challenge though is, of course, like as you build, you still build new features, and you have to reconfigure the tool. And we just announced we're launching ClickUp 3.0 in the fall, or announcing it in the fall. And that'd be an up-leveled way of working, but it's definitely going to be, it's more of that, all of your work, everything in one place, all of your knowledge. You don't have to switch between different things, or different apps. And that's always been the vision, but it's a more realized version of that. So thank you for, yeah. And I think what you kind of spoke to is the awareness allows me to rent space in your mind. And then when there's a conversation to validate that the product is great, it's the work it's doing its work for me, right? The
Oh my gosh.
work. And
That's
that's like,
oh
yeah,
my
like,
gosh.
that's a huge part of marketing. It's like you have to rent the space for the conversation to be able to come up, and then the validation should happen based on the product itself, and the product being solid.
Melissa, literally have, in fact, Ricky, my producer, can validate. I have what's called the marketing chills. Because I mean, you are absolutely correct. It's like the idea of renting space in someone's mind. It's kind of a rent to own situation. It's like
Yeah.
not everyone's going to follow through on it, but people have the opportunity. And I always say, I always explain to potential new clients that work with us, I'm like, my job's not to sell what you
Hmm.
have. My job is to give you the opportunity
Yes.
to sell.
Yes.
I'm like, at the end of the day, like people will make their decisions, but like I at least want to get someone to a yes or no, even if it's a no. But like
Yeah.
if they don't even have the opportunity, how can you be in the game?
That is the entire point of brand awareness. It's like to have the awareness, to be able to have that conversation, to be able to like even have that is a part of marketing that I think is, I mean, people of course care about it, but when you can't measure it dollar for dollar, I think that there's this definitely lack of like clear understanding of why do it, and you just validated why do it, because that's the exact reason, so that you can have that conversation.
So that's it for now. Thank you for listening, and make sure to subscribe so you can check out part 2 of this conversation. We're going to talk more about what inspires Melissa, what advice she has for marketers, and what we're thinking about when it comes to the future of marketing. She also gives some really great tangible tips for how to apply disruption to your marketing. So don't miss out.